Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm Bruce McCurdy of the Edmonton Journal's Cult of Hockey, and I'm here tonight with my colleague Kurt Levins, all the way from Pender Island in British Columbia. Almost far enough away tonight. Kurt, how are you doing?
Well, I don't imagine all my old friends in Edmonton heard me curse during the second period last
They were
night.
too busy cursing themselves.
Probably, I think it was going around. Yeah, I guess I've been better than I am tonight. That was
Mm-hmm.
a frustrating one.
Yeah, well, to recap, Edmonton had a terrific first period, jumped to a 2-0 lead, and came out for the second period entirely different looking hockey club. Like they were, instead of Stanley Cup contenders, were down in some other league. Near as I could tell, Dallas certainly raised their game a couple of notches, and Edmonton just could not match it. They were absolutely overwhelmed for the first 10 to 12 minutes of the second period. Dallas turned it around with three quick ones in 3 minutes and 33 seconds. This after not scoring three goals in the whole game, really, in either of the first two games. But uh, Edmonton fought back to tie it up on a goal late in the second. Played pretty well in the third period, but had another defensive breakdown and could not break through to score themselves. And the obligatory empty netter made it 5-3 for the visitors, including a 5-1 margin over the final 40 minutes. So now Dallas has a 2-1 lead in the series, and Edmonton and their fans have a whole lot of questions to ask about what in the hell happened. So, Kurt, what in the hell happened?
Well, it was kind of funny. That very first shift of the second period, as soon as the puck dropped, Jamie Benn just took off like a shot out of a gun. Um, and it looked like Dallas in the first intermission had decided that that first 20 minutes wasn't their best game, and they had best put their best foot forward, or they'd behind very quickly 2-1 in the series. It would not appear as if Edmonton had the same conversation in its room,
Or on
because
its bench.
yeah, because it came out passive, on the back foot to say the least. And while Stuart Skinner had issues later in the game, in the second period, he's about the only thing they had going for them for about 15 minutes there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like two different games, two different worlds. Who are these guys? It was a pretty strange game.
Yeah, it was all of that. And it was like almost three different games, but the amount by which it turned between the first period and the start of the second was mind-boggling. So
Yeah, it defies explanation. It's there's
yeah.
no earthly reason for that to happen. And one of the rare times in these Stanley Cup playoffs, I wondered if Chris Knobloch should have called a timeout after the second goal. It's just, it was, I I won't lie, I actually uttered the phrase after the 2-2, "Here come the Oilers,"
Mhm.
which I
Yeah.
think we all remember from the dark days. And I had a bad feeling after the 2-2 that this
Yeah.
momentum wasn't swinging
Mhm.
back anytime soon. And I turned out to be right. I think if the coach had to do it over again, I think he would have not left his timeout in the pocket. It ended up doing him no earthly good. So,
Yeah, well, they same thing happened in game one in Vancouver when Vancouver scored two quick ones to tie it up, and they didn't call a timeout at that time. And Vancouver scored the go-ahead goal within a minute, which guess what? Exact same thing happened tonight. And they asked Knobloch specifically that question in the post game, and his reply was that he thought they handled it well during the TV timeout. So that's all well and good, but they scored two straight before the TV timeout. That 3-2 goal was a time when Edmonton really needed to get their breath and get their crap together, and they just couldn't manage it. I'm not sure if a timeout would have changed it or not, but that's kind of the time you would think to be using it.
Yeah, as I said, it's if not then when, and I guess it's easy to say that with hindsight, but and it certainly wasn't the only issue tonight, but it was one that kind of stuck in my mind that I think if he had to do it over again, he might have chose differently.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean he kind of deflected the question, but I bet you he might be giving himself the what for in terms of what went wrong in this game and what could I as the coach could have done differently. But we're going to talk mostly, I think, about what the players might have done differently, because it's the players that win and lose games, and it was the Edmonton Oilers who lost this game. And frankly, to me, they lost it on demerit. They, for all the great start, they deserved their fate in this game by just completely losing it for such an extended stretch. Kurt, two good things, two bad things, two numbers, and one, I think, fairly obvious conundrum that we didn't pre-discuss, but you'll know what it's going to be. But let's start with the good things, and you go first. Kurt, what's your good thing tonight?
Well, my good thing will be the Oilers' bottom six. I think we've become used to the Oilers' fourth line performing well, and they did again tonight. When you have your fourth line players posting 5-on-5 CFs of 71, 61, and 69, you're doing all right. The fourth line more than broke even in this game, and Connor Brown picked up a well-deserved assist on the 3-3 goal, which ended that period of pain in the second period and brought the game even again. And that aforementioned 3-3 goal was scored by Adam Henrique, which was the new player inserted into the lineup tonight. Ryan McLeod took a seat, which I thought was appropriate. And I thought that Henrique rewarded his coach with a good effort. I spotted a dozen smart little plays all over the ice, which is one of his trademarks. The other one of his trademarks, which we saw from Henrique since he arrived here, is he has great hands around the net. And that tip off the Brown pass was a deft one. And if they don't score right at the end of the period, I'm not so sure that the third period would have gone as well as it did. But I think that kind of rescued them and gave them a second win and gave them a puncher's chance in the third period. I don't think that the third line was perfect by any means, but after not pissing a drop for how long, it was finally nice to get a goal from that unit. And I think Adam Henrique showed his coach that he made a wise decision by putting him back in.
Right on. Good choice. I'm going to go with the start of the game. And Edmonton came out gunning on Ben Stelter's birthday. I thought they might be pumped for the game a little tiny bit more because of that, and it seemed like they came out strong. And by the 7:37 mark of the period, it was 2-0 for Edmonton on goals by Hyman and McDavid, which is about as promising a start as you could possibly hope for. And they had a couple of chances, great chances, to extend that lead. McDavid was set up by Nugent Hopkins for a shot that hit the outside of the net when basically he had most of the net to shoot it into. And then Nurse crashed the front of the net and got a rebound with basically the entire net to shoot at. And he managed to hit Jake Ottinger with his backhand shot. And it was officially recorded as a wide shot because the only way he could hit Ottinger was by missing the net because Ottinger wasn't covering any of it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a spin around, like he had to pull the puck sort of against the flow and pull it back into the open cage, and he just couldn't on his backhand. Kind of went off the end of his stick a little bit and into Ottinger. But those two glorious chances to really, blow the game open. And it was already 2-0 before either of those two chances. And, they were still coming pretty good and creating, but they couldn't find a way to to get the third goal and the 2-0 lead, great as it was at the end of the first 20 minutes. It didn't even last 10 minutes, let alone 40.
Yeah, no, it's when I watched that first period, I thought, okay,
Here we are.
here we are. Let's see if this team is as mature as we think they are now defensively, and let's see how solid their leadership group is in making damn sure that we protect this lead and lock it down. And I think it is not too harsh to say that they failed on both of those fronts. After fully earning themselves a 2-0 lead in that first period, because that first period very easily could have been the first period of game 2, where they played really well and didn't come away with the lead. Instead, they did. And I thought they were full marks for it, which makes it all that more frustrating that they frittered it away after that.
Yeah, it sure did. Okay, well, that's one good thing each. Let's go to our bad things. We're just, I think, going to do one each as well. You could do a long list of bad things. You wanted to get it down and dirty with the details of, various things that led up to each of the goals against. But maybe with a broader brush look. And I'm going to go ahead of you, Kurt, because my bad thing happened. Well, most of it happened before yours in the game. And my bad thing is Oilers' failure to clear the puck out of their own zone. And most of the, not all of it, but most of the chaos here happened in that sort of 10-minute span. And there was a shift early in the second period where they had a ticker on the screen, and it had Dallas with possession in Edmonton's end for something like 1:15 or 1:20, where the puck never got out. And it wasn't for lack of opportunity to get it out, but it was for lack of execution to get it out. And chaos ensued. They did not score on this sequence, which was kind of a miracle. I think Darnell Nurse played maybe 2.5-minute shift there.
Yeah.
And he was knackered sort of partway through it. In the end, he made the save of possibly the game with his backside when he was down and in the crease and trying to recover his stick, which he dropped, and the guy that had the puck in the slot with Skinner beat fired it and hit him right in the butt. And so that was the most dangerous of several great chances in a row there. We had one at 17:02, 17:01, and 16:58 in our grade A list. Those were the first three of the middle frame. But that just was the beginning of it. On the 1-1 goal, the puck came to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins just inside the blue line, and I honestly think if he hadn't touched it at all, it would have gone out. But he reached out and he chipped it kind of diagonally, so it had to go a longer route to get over the blue line, and the Vegas guy just kept it. Or sorry, Vegas. I still got Vegas on my mind. The Dallas guy still was able to just barely keep it onside at the blue line, and that little failure from 3 feet inside the blue line cost him a goal.
Yep.
The 2-2, there was no sort of specific play where someone had the puck and failed to clear it, but there was a play where they had the puck, or there was opportunities to win a battle, get the puck and clear it, and they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, both Bouchard and Ekholm had a chance, and both lost puck battles on that sequence.
Right, and then on the 3-2, the puck came to Vincent Desharnais, 2 feet inside the blue line, and all he's got to do is bank it off the boards to beat the forechecker on him, get out in the neutral zone. Except for, guess what? He can't get it by the guy, and it goes into the zone, and fairly soon thereafter, that one winds up in the net. And just sort of general failures in defensive execution. I mean, we could get into lost coverages and weak back checks and things like that, but it's to me, poor puck management is at the very top of the list.
Yep. No, I totally agree, and I think that folds into my bad thing, which is the 4-3 goal. And to be fair, I guess there's a little bit of bad luck on the 4-3 goal. The carom off of Draisaitl's skate. And then Cody Ceci, who actually didn't make all that bad of a play on that sequence, but when all the sticks slapped together in the battle for the puck, there's no possible way that puck could have gone in a worse direction for Cody Ceci than it did. So it's
right to
kind
the
of,
hat trick, man.
yeah, you could see kind of the rocks tumbling off the cliff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Robertson gets the puck, and it's a kind of a tight end 2-on-1, and Darnell Nurse, to say he played that passively is putting it mildly. He 100% played pass on that play, to the point where Robertson, I think, initially was going to go around the net. But when Nurse backed right off and gave him that lane, I think Robertson just decided to take it and took the puck to the net. And so there's a case where I think if Darnell is more aggressive on fronting his man there, I don't think that goes in. But in fairness to Nurse, that's a goal that Stuart Skinner has to stop. He just lost his post. I think he thought Robertson was going to go around the net too. But think and do are two different things. And Robertson stopped on a dime, and there was just that little triangle right inside the post, and that's where, you know, a goal scorer like Robertson's going to find that little spot. But if Stuart Skinner stays on his post, that puck doesn't go in. It's still 3-3. It's still anybody's game.
Might still be 3-3 right now.
It might still be. So talk about a sequence of events. Literally everybody on the ice, on the defensive side of that puck, touched the play in a bad way. And when a shift goes that badly, and you're literally just crumbling defensively, it's not going to end well, and it did not.
Yeah, well, one of their most successful plays of clearing the zone was when the linesman picked the puck up out of the net and carried it to center ice for the face-off.
Oh, burn!
Wow.
Well, at least you gave me a reason to laugh.
Oh, well. Yeah. Might as well. I'm trying to enjoy the games, Kurt, as the playoffs go deep. Thinking, you know, in some ways this is bonus hockey. You know, we're still playing deep into the spring, best against best, but it is very, very frustrating when your team's best suddenly falls out the floor. There's a trap door in the middle of the defensive zone, and they all skate into it. Anyways, that was all she wrote. That puck, like, I thought Robertson made a move on Skinner to get him moving. So even though he shot from behind the line, it was, you know, he was so close to the net with nobody challenging him that it was a dangerous shot. But still, in the end, there was one low angle that showed the puck actually coming between. Basically, the skate blade was against the post, but the pad wasn't, the bottom of the pad. And somehow the puck hit that little space and took a deflection and into the net, and that was that. And
that's the knock against Stuart Skinner, right? You know, he had the big breakaway save and a number of other good saves that were notable on the night, but he just seems to have one stinker in his back pocket every game, and he just seemed to shake it consistently, and that bug bit him again tonight.
Well, it's 3 games in a row that Dallas has scored the goal in the third period. And I'm not sure they had any chance on the tying goal in the first game. But anyway, like, score in the 3 third periods in the series is 5-0 for Dallas with 2 empty net goals. But still, they've won all the third periods. They've done a hell of a better job of protecting leads than Edmonton has.
And the Oilers traditionally are such a good third period team. At least they were over the balance of the regular season.
Regular season, yeah. Well, I'm trying to add up all the games lately that they've blown a 2-goal lead, or 2+ goal lead. And I think it's 4 out of the last 10. They had a 3-0 lead against Vancouver in or sorry, 4-1 lead against Vancouver in game 1 and lost 5-4. They had a 2-0 lead against Vancouver in game 5. No, game 4, pardon me, game 4. They blew the lead, and then Bouchard got the winner right after that, after they blew the 2-0 lead. Then in game 7 of that series, it was 3-0 for Edmonton. Home cooled out with 10 minutes left, and it wound up being pucker up time for the last 5 minutes when it became 3-2. In the end, they did hold the lead, but they gave up a couple of goals, and it didn't exactly look like smooth sailing.
Yeah, that was the McLeod turnover on the 3.
Yeah, that was one of them. Yep. And then in game 1 of this series, it was 2-0 for Edmonton, and Dallas came back and tied it up. And Edmonton again, they got away with it because they won the game in overtime. But again, they had a multi-goal lead that they couldn't hold. And then tonight, 2-0 lead turns into a 5-3 loss. Like, what happens with the lead that they can't add to it, which is a real good way to lock a game down, is turn a 2-0 lead into a 4-0 lead.
Yep.
Anyway, there's been none of that, and they just haven't been able to lock her down. They've shown signs, and some of the games they've been okay, but there's been way too many games where it's 2-goal lead for Edmonton. The next thing you know, they're tied or behind.
Yeah, and they're also missing some opportunities to put more distance between themselves and their opposition, like the failed first period power play tonight. You're not getting many man advantages, but if you score on that, maybe there's a different outcome. But the power play, which has started out so red hot in these playoffs, has gone moderately cold since.
Well, they got 1 goal in the last 6 games. I'd call that flat out cold. I mean, they're only getting 1 or 2 chances a game, but 1 goal in 6 games is, it was a series winner against Vancouver. So they picked a real good time to score one, but 0 for this current series in 5 opportunities. So not a lot, but you'd expect Edmonton's power play to click at least once.
Yeah.
5 chances.
Yeah, and the PK is certainly doing its job.
Yeah. Anyway, for numbers, my number, I'm looking at Oilers defense, and I'm looking at all the defensemen in the NHL who've played at least into the second round of the playoffs. And so using natural stat trick, with a cutoff of 150 minutes, that has 43 defenders, all of whom played 9+ games. So basically all of the teams that made the second round. That's almost 6 defenders per team, so it's most of them. And here's the numbers on the goals against side of the ledger for defensemen that have been on the ice for goals against. Number 1, most in the NHL, Darnell Nurse, 18 goals against. He's been on the ice for 18 goals against in 249 minutes, which essentially is 4 games. Just a little over 4 games, 18 goals against. The next, tied for second, all the way down at 12, like he's 50% ahead of anybody else. It's a 4-way tie for second with 2 Oilers among the 4, Vincent Desharnais and Cody Ceci. And they're both on for 12 against. And here are the goals for and against for those 3 players. 8-18 for Nurse, 5-12 for Desharnais, 6-12 for Ceci. So they're all 3. This is half of Edmonton's defense getting crushed. Getting crushed on goals for and against,
Yeah, so. And Nurse tonight on natural stat trick, scoring chances 4 and against 5-on-5. Nurse was 4-12.
Wow.
Which is pretty dim.
Yeah. So if you do the same thing, same stats, but convert it to rates, like goals against per 60 minutes on the ice, and we have Nurse number 1, if you want to look at it that way, or number how many did I say? 43 out of 43. 4.33 goals against per 60. Second is DeHarnay at 3.4. Third is Susie, not Cece, Susie at 3.18. And fourth is Sean Walker, the guy everybody wanted to get in the trade deadline, 2.99. So put another way, out of 43 defensemen, 40 of them are below 3 goals per game. And 2 Oilers are above it, including the Nurse at above 4, well above 4 goals per game. And what's going on? Like, this is supposedly Edmonton's, big shutdown defenseman. It's not like he's out there scoring a million points like Evan Bouchard is. He's got 2 points in the playoffs. And it's just not happening at either end of the ice with this guy. And it's a mammoth concern. I mean, this is a contract that's got 6 more years to run.
Well, I had the thought tonight that the Oilers defenseman who has been better than Nurse in pretty much every game this postseason, and certainly was better than him again tonight, is Brett Kulak.
Uh-huh. He's 9-4-6 against.
Yeah. Tonight, 5-on-5. He had a CF of 70. Scoring chances, 3-4-3 against.
Wow.
Makes you wonder if Kulak should be the second pairing left defenseman next game. Hey, they sat Ryan McLeod.
Yeah.
If it's a meritocracy, as much as I like Darnell Nurse and have spent the better part of the last 3-4 years defending him, he isn't getting it done.
No.
Right?
Not sure what's wrong, but there's something wrong because his game just isn't there, and he's
Is he hurt? Like, I'm with you. I'm befuddled.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a problem, and it's not like he's at the bottom end of the payroll or on a contract that's expiring, this summer or next summer. It's a long-term thing. He's now 29 years old with 700 games in the league, 600 and some games in the league. I can't remember the exact number, but a lot. He's logged a ton of minutes for the Oilers over the years. And all these years thinking, well, he's a young guy. He's going to keep getting better and better and better. But where is it?
Well, you know what?
When's the payoff?
He only played the 4th most minutes of Oilers defenseman tonight. When's the last time that happened?
It's happened a little bit, I think, in the playoffs. I've seen a couple of games where he's been below 20 minutes. That never used to happen.
Yeah, precisely, right? Where like Bouchard played 24 and a half tonight. Cece played 21. Ekholm played just about 21. Nurse was at 19. Kulak at 16. DeHarnay at 15.
Yeah. So you've got Kulak, he's either playing with CC or he's been playing with DeHarnay, both of whom are on the list of guys that have struggled to keep the puck out of the net, but they've both done better when they've been playing with Kulak than they have when playing with Nurse.
Yeah.
And maybe a tiny bit of that's matchups, but it comes nowhere close to explaining all of it.
No, and it would be, by my recollection, the 3rd consecutive postseason where Brett Kulak's been really good for us.
Yeah. Yeah, he's never been the problem really at any point, right? I mean, he had one pizza that he served up for a goal against in game 1. That was kind of like the McLeod one in a way, but I mean, that was just a rare mishandle of the puck on crappy ice, I might add.
Yep.
In that game. But it's not like you can make a big long list of all the goals against where Brett Kulak screwed up. But I think you could start to make a pretty long list for some of these other guys at this point.
Unfortunately so.
Kurt, number.
My number is 1249, which is how long it took for the Oilers to get their first shot of the second period. So here is one of the most vaunted offenses in the National Hockey League the last 3-4 years. And yeah, the Dallas Stars are a good defensive team. But one shot in 12 minutes and 49 seconds, like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
Because as much as the defensive breakdowns sure bothered us, which led to, the erasing of the 2-0 lead and putting Dallas up 3-2. Well, while we were giving away those 3 goals, we sure weren't doing much in the other direction.
Never had the puck.
Shots on goal, nothing, right?
Yeah. Well, shots on net in those early minutes of the second period were 14-0. They were 13-0 by the time they made it 3-0 at the 9:08 mark, right? So
Yeah.
13 shots, like that's more than an average period's worth of shots, in less than half a period.
Then they got the 14th before the Oilers got.
That was the Marchment breakaway with about 9 minutes left. So
Which
here we
was
go.
A hell of a save, by the way.
Shots at 133. So shots at. Oh, I'm back in the wrong period. My bad. Dallas's shots at 106, 115, 234, 236, 253, 420, and then the goal at 535, 741, 801, 802, 803, and the goal at 805. That's a nice sequence for you.
Yeah.
And then we have another goal at 9:08 scored by their top goal scorer against Air, because puck went to him beside the net. Nobody was around him, and neither was Skinner, and he just popped it home. And then they had the one that was the Marchment breakaway at 11:10. So by that point, the shots on net were 14-0. And a lot of them were grade A's. We had grade A's in the second period as 13-3, with Dallas getting the first 12.
Man.
Yeah. So it's just like for 10 minutes, the Edmonton Oilers just were not good at hockey. And the Stars were. I mean, that's the thing. You're not playing against, this isn't a game where you can sort of lose your crop for a while and you're playing against Chicago or Anaheim or Arizona, right? This is conference finals. You got to bring it for 60 minutes. And starting to despair if they're ever going to learn that.
Yeah. And, this is probably a longer conversation for another day. But I've been thinking about their defensive structure these last couple of games. And when Dallas cycles the puck in Edmonton's end, that zone defense just lets them keep cycling it. The one thing you like about man-to-man coverage is it puts you in a better spot to snuff out cycles because you're tighter to your man. You're usually tailing your man or fronting your man. Whereas in a zone, it's way more of a passive defense. And while I think zone certainly has its pluses and helps feed transition, it isn't particularly strong against the cycle. And I guess if you're saying, oh, well, but if you keep it to the outside, yeah, but after a while, possession, the more time one team has possession that end, the more opportunities you're going to have to make a mistake and the puck's going to go in the net. And so I'm starting to wonder just how much of a revelation the zone defense was. And who knows, maybe the Oilers will go on to win the series and I'll eat my words, but I've been thinking it for a couple of games, so I may as well say it now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about the one-on-one is that, you have opportunities to win battles. And I would argue that the Oilers did have opportunities to win battles tonight and didn't win them.
Yep.
And, those endless cycles in their end were the result. And of course, once you get 90 seconds or so into your shift, it's pretty damn hard to do anything right, let alone win the battle, get the puck out without icing it, and make it all the way to the far bench. Yeah. It was just too big of a challenge for him tonight.
And the funny thing is, it seemed like the Oilers line that was most effective against Dallas' cycle was the fourth line.
Yeah, well, they had a pretty decent pretty decent possession numbers, as you pointed out earlier, meaning they weren't giving up a lot of shots and they were at least creating shots towards the Dallas net, even if they weren't necessarily high danger ones. They were, playing with the puck in the right end of the ice.
Well, Sam,
Their job is to saw off and let the big boys win the game for Edmonton.
right? Sam Carrick played 8:31 at 5-on-5 hockey tonight and allowed a grand total of no high danger scoring chances against. That's all right. Pretty hard to take out of the lineup. I thought he was quite good tonight.
Mm-hmm. Well, that leads us into our conundrum, Kurt. And I think the simple way to put it is, now what? Or what's next? What do they do?
Yeah.
After this? How do you reset? Not just one player like they were doing with Ryan McCurdy. How do you reset your hockey team to come out with a game plan that A, they can execute, B, for 60 minutes, that will be effective, C, will be effective against the Dallas Stars? What's your approach? Put yourself in the mind of the coaching staff.
Yeah, it's a hell of a good question, because I'm not so sure that most of the problem in that second period was physical.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like they weren't in the right mind frame. And as you know, technical errors are usually one or two players at a time making those mistakes. But if your team doesn't have the right mindset, suddenly it can look like, every skater on the ice is lost. And so it makes me wonder how much bounce back these guys have in them. Now, they really showed us how much bounce back they had against Vancouver. Down 3-2, they stormed back, won Game 6, won Game 7. But the Dallas Stars are a whole different pickle from the Vancouver Canucks. And it's doubly frustrating because they had wrestled home ice advantage away and then just gave it back again. Now, they did that last series too.
Yep.
But if you keep handing away those advantages, it's going to come back to bite you. And so at this point, you got to wonder if there's a seed of doubt in that room. It's still early. There's still lots of hockey to play. But I really wonder how much of this is in their heads right now. And then we can talk about, what might they do lineup wise. But I think from a bigger picture view from 10,000 feet standpoint, that's probably what's going through my head tonight.
Right. Yeah, well, they didn't have the right mental framework to handle that second period barrage, and when it came, they crumbled. It's no real, can't really gloss over it. It wasn't a fluke that Dallas scored 3 goals. I mean, they could have scored 5 goals in that span. I mean, maybe your goalie stands on his head and somehow keeps you ahead or at least tied in the game. But that's what it would have taken. And it's...
as it was, Skinner stopped that breakaway. It would have been 4-2. And then the game would have been over.
Right.
Yeah.
So what then? What do you change? Right? Is there personnel changes? Do you want to change up the lines? Do you want to bring McLeod back in? Do you want to change up the defense? I mean, I named 3 guys that are pretty much getting caved in the playoffs out of 6. Do you want to replace one of them with a guy, either Broberg or Stetcher, that hasn't played 1 game yet in the playoffs? Like, are you sort of cemented into using the guys that you got, and you're trying to figure out the best way to deploy them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I
got lots of questions. Just don't ask me for answers.
Yeah, I think Ryan McLeod will probably come back in. I think his speed is an asset.
Yep.
but Henrique ain't coming back out.
Nope.
And so I think you're going to replace slower boots with faster boots.
Yep.
And with McLeod coming in, well, that's one of your bottom 6 guys is coming out, because nobody's coming out of your top 6.
Probably not.
Yeah. And the other question is, I wonder if it's time for Corey Perry to make an appearance in this series. This is a tough spot, and you might argue this is the kind of situation for which you went out and got Corey Perry. So maybe this would be a good time for him to be reinserted into the lineup. The problem there is you can't replace fast boots with those slow boots. So there would need to be a corresponding change there. Having said that, I'm talking about McLeod and Perry coming in. Those aren't exactly earth-shattering changes that I would think would shift the momentum of a series. They're probably just the 2 easiest ones that I can think of. On pure merit, based on tonight, you might make a decision on Darnell Nurse or Vincent Desharnais. But in reality, are you really? I think at the end of the day, especially with a guy like Nurse, I think you're going to win or lose with that guy.
Yeah, no chance they're taking him out.
Yeah, I think those are the cold, hard facts. Frankly, I think it's up to Darnell Nurse to set his jaw and be better.
Yeah. Well, I saw him in the post game, and he says a lot of the right things, but sometimes the things that they say and the things that they do don't mesh all that well.
Yeah, and as we said, hey, maybe after the playoffs are over, we'll find out that Darnell Nurse was far less than 100%. But
I suspect that to be the truth.
Yeah, but until such time, it's who's not injured by this stage in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Right.
He sure isn't as physical as I'm used to seeing him, but he hasn't been that way for some time, Bruce. He hasn't been that way for the last half of the season.
Right. Which does sort of ask the question, how long has he been dealing with something and trying to, get by with, less than 100% physical, which is, his athleticism is his greatest strength.
Yeah, and he seems to be skating fine, which makes me wonder if it's a core issue or a shoulder or something like that.
Anyway, we've talked certainly about that player, but he's far from the only one who's dealing with some stuff right now, and the team as a whole did not deal well with the pushback that Dallas brought tonight, and they just didn't have anywhere near enough pushback of their own. And by the time that, it was 3-2 and they fought back to tie it, but the time between 2-0 and 3-2 is the part that has to be scrutinized heavily by whoever's doing the films and the coaching staff and whoever else to see what the heck it is that went wrong. That how come all of a sudden your whole team couldn't clear the puck or couldn't, pick up the guy on the back check or couldn't, cover guys in front of the net or whatever the different problems were. There was many different problems, and we got some of them in our grade A scoring chances, which I don't think I ever actually said what they were in this game. They were relatively close, 15-13 for Dallas, but like I say, they had 12 in a row in the second period with Edmonton controlling much of the play before and after. But the 5 alarm chances were 11-6 for Dallas. And what stands out to me is that of the 15 grade A's Edmonton gave up, 11 of them were 5 alarms. Like normally that number is half or less that are, super dangerous chances. And it seemed like every time Edmonton did give up a chance, it was a 10 bill, or as we put it, 5 alarm chance.
Well, I struggled with Stuart Skinner's grade tonight, and it's funny. I gave him a 4.
Yeah.
And I already have had a few people say, you were too generous, but really the only goal I had an issue with was the 4-3.
Mm-hmm.
His rebound control wasn't great.
Maybe on the 3-2, there was a rebound, or maybe which one was it where there was an outside shot and then there was a couple of quick rebounds.
Yeah. So, yeah, he allowed 4 goals and one of them was a softie, but he also stopped a lot of pucks and a lot of them, as you just described, in dangerous situations. So while I failed him, I kind of felt like anything less than a 4 wasn't giving him credit for what he did do.
Yeah. Yeah, big stop on that Marchment breakaway. Big stop on Duchesne to keep it 3-3 in the third, and then that disaster. And even on that disaster, your goalie is going 1-on-1 with a 30 goal scorer for 2, 3, 4, 5 steamboats, and nobody's pressuring the guy.
Yeah, and there were 3 or 4.
Sure, you expect your goalie to stop him, but how about a little bloody help?
Yeah, no, yeah, because as I said, because there were 3 or 4 bad bounces or mistakes in front of him before he let in the softie, right? So it isn't just on him, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. What about you? What would you do ahead of game 4? I didn't come up with very good ideas. Hopefully yours are better than mine.
Tempting to get Broberg in there, but it's probably too little too late, and it's a mighty tall ask of the kid. What he brings is something that, a little bit of mobility on the back end, which is what's been serving Brett Kulak so well.
Yep.
And, what's noticeably absent from the games of, well, let's say Ceci and Desharnais in particular, and Nurse, who I would say is less mobile than we've come to expect over the years. But that's almost a desperation move at this point. But I'm not, I guess one possible solution would be break up Bush and Ekholm and rework the partnerships in a different way. That also kind of smacks of desperation. But Bush and Ekholm didn't exactly have a great game tonight either. They were on for the first 2 goals against. And, they didn't get Bouchard again. Second game in a row, he had 9 shot attempts, but only 2 got through on net. 5 were blocked.
Yeah,
last game it
being
was
a little deselective too.
9 shots that were blocked by him. So in 2 games, he had 5 shots on net and 14 that were blocked.
Yeah.
So
I think he's overthinking it right now.
Well, and Dallas is clearly keen on taking away that shot, and they're doing a great job of it.
Yeah.
But maybe there's other options, and if they're so keying on that lane, maybe that's time for the shot pass to the guy that's sort of off the shooting line who can deflect it home.
But of course, that's what he did on the Hyman goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there was a lane to the net, but there was 2 Dallas Stars in that lane, and so instead he dumped it off to the circle where McDavid was, and it turned into a goal. So So in some cases you have to take what they give you. So
right. Anyway, I got McLeod back in there. Not that he's necessarily the answer, but I think you got to give him a shot at this point. After they took him out and it didn't work, Yeah. You can't be sort of saying, well, it's his fault they lost this game, so he stays out. And who comes out of the lineup is anyone's guess. I wasn't totally enthused with some aspects of Warren Fogel's game tonight. He made a real bad pass that led to the breakout. He rung one around the boards that trapped him and both his line mates, and Dallas picked it off at sort of the hash marks on the far boards. It never reached the Edmonton defenseman, and then I can't remember the exact sequence, but that's how Dallas got the puck. Yeah. And this was on the it was in the build-up before the 2-2 goal. And he was off the ice by the time the puck went in, but the whole reason they had it in Edmonton's zone was because he'd coughed it up in the first place with a pass to nobody. It's one of those.
Yet that Henrique goal probably doesn't go in without his forecheck, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. So, all these guys have their case to make. Anyway, the case I'll make is that Chris Knobloch's got his work cut out for him between now and game 4 to not only build a game plan, but to build his team's confidence that they have what it takes to, beat this Dallas club, and that they have some sort of game plan. And how the heck do they hold on to a lead when they get one?
Yeah. I guess the flip side of that, because I think you and I are feeling very similarly to, but if I were to flip it around, still, it's a 2-1 series and all 3 games have been 1-goal games. So while I think it's easy for us to sit here and kind of feel glum, at the same time, the margins in this series remain remarkably narrow. This series could just as easily be 2-1 Edmonton or 3-1 Dallas.
3-0 it could be. I mean, with the game so close as they are.
Yeah, right. So
Robertson hit 2 posts in overtime in game 1, right?
Yep. Game 4 is probably the turning point for both teams.
Yeah.
Surely the most important game of the series. But I suppose if we can take some solace in the fact that all 3 of these games have been airtight on the scoreboard and have come down to the final, moments of all 3 games, essentially.
Yeah. Well, you talked about home ice advantage earlier. Here's a stat for you, Kurt, that I picked off the TV before I came in here. Of the 14 series now, there's only 1 left that have played at least 3 games. The road team has won game 3 in 13 of the 14.
I'll throw
13 and 1.
I'll throw a stat back at you. In I think it's the last 20 years of Stanley Cup playoffs. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% sure. We may have to fact the length of time. But the percentage, the winning percentage of the team that wins game 3 in a series I believe, is 76%.
Yeah, well, of course, all the game 3s are hosted by the underdog team or the lower seeded team.
Yeah.
And so far, we've seen 10 of the 12 higher seeds win their series. And the only lower seeds to win was Colorado in the first round and Edmonton in the second round. Of course, Edmonton lost game 3 at home last series and came back to win the series. So they have to duplicate that feat as, again, the lower seed against Dallas. So.
And they were really underdogs by a couple of points, really. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, any final thoughts, words of wisdom?
Hope springs anew, I guess. And game 4 gives you, a brand new chance to put your best foot forward and bring this series even again and make it a best of 3. And probably if the Oilers are going to have any shot at this, they can't look more than 60 minutes ahead.
Preferably the entire 60.
Yes.
That's the key to me is, you can't be having these lapses in games against good teams and expect to get away with them.
That's
my big takeaway from this game.
Yeah, I think we maybe understated how thoroughly they outplayed Dallas in the first period, and then how thoroughly Dallas outplayed
even more thoroughly. Yeah,
like just night and day. It's still shaking my head over that.
Yeah, me too. All right, well let's leave it there, and thanks for filling in for David Staples tonight, Kurt, on a pinch hit basis, and hopefully better days ahead.
Always happy to do my rusty stop, and let's hope for better things in game 4.
I know. All right. Well, thanks to you, Kurt. Thanks to everyone for listening. And in the meantime and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.